I love it. This is fun. All right. I guess we could get started. It is 12:03, so we're fine. I guess we just, everyone kind of give a 5-second overview of who you are and what you're bringing to the table in case people have questions, and we'll get started. I'm Sarah. I own SovereignPort, and we do customs clearance, and we use other shippers. So we're using Georgia Interport. In the US, we're using 357 Logistics. They're amazing for trucking the stuff around. That's who we're actually using. So that's what we do. We just help with customs clearance and making sure everything gets through correctly. We primarily, 99% of our business is CBD and industrial hemp. So Dan?
Yep, I just had to get off of mute there. So I'm the VP of Hemp Direct for SovereignPort, and I basically have the connect to the farms, direct to the labs as well. So we've got a ton of EU compliant product right now. I mean, we've in excess of 5 million pounds. We probably got that for domestic use as well. That's above 2 THC. Or Delta 9, whatever you want, how everybody's looking at it. But it's compliant to go overseas, compliant to be shipped across the states. We work with 357 Logistics. Kevin can help you out. Make sure that we meet all the parameters, have all the manifests and all the documentation in place. But pretty much, you know, we've still been moving a lot of product in the downtime here with the coronavirus. We've got flour as well. So pretty much anything that anybody's looking for, we have access to. And it's a direct access, not that we don't use brokers from time to time, but we're pretty well vertically integrated. So we've got the direct connect. So anything you need, reach out to us. Kevin, you want to go, or Josh?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us on and including us. My name's Kevin Schultz. I'm one of the co-founders at 357 Hemp Logistics, primarily interstate transport within the United States. We lean on Sarah's team a lot for anything internationally. We like to say we're becoming experts since everything's so fluid, and really a significant amount of our time today is focused on keeping in touch with each state individually to make sure we're understanding the ever-changing laws and new permit requirements, and really trying to stay on the cutting edge of those laws so we can be the resource that you guys need us to be when called upon. Currently, right now, we're seeing a huge uptick in nursery shipments. It seems to be clone and seedling season. And, you know, the biomass is slowly starting to pick up again, too, as well. I think it went a little slow around the January, February months. And obviously now with COVID, you know, logistics in general, we do have a division that primarily focuses on general commodity freight. So we have a good feel for what's happening in the market in general. And, you know, we anticipate some supply chain disruption here coming up in the near future. That'll have a trickle-down effect for a few months probably. But, you know, the good news is hemp seems to be heating up quite a bit. So happy to be on, and hopefully we can answer any questions anyone has that's logging in too as well. Thanks for having us.
George?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jorge Tuya. I am the import manager and the director of foreign trade zone operations for Interport Logistics. I am a licensed customs broker. And for the past year or so, I've been concentrating on the movement of CBD and hemp-related products through U.S. Customs. There's a couple of issues that are still up in the air with Customs, both FDA and Customs. We're ready to give us some guidance, but because of this virus, everything's been pushed back a little bit. What they have asked, since they don't have testing at all of the ports, or the testing they do have is just going to test for THC, which means that everything that comes in, unless it's tea-free, is going to test hot and it will be seized. Until we can find a way to bring in any kind of isolate or any kind of hemp-related material where it could get tested for THC levels at the ports, it's going to be difficult to bring anything that's got any tea in it at all. There are some people that are trying to bring in some tea-free isolates and distillates, and they haven't even gotten anything through yet. I think they had one shipment in Colorado, but I've got a shipment coming in next week or the week after, hopefully, that I'm going to work with customs to see how we can get it to do. And then I'll be able to report and be able to tell you exactly how they handled it, what their criteria was, and how quickly it happened. I did get one response from one of the directors in Washington saying that they would like us to have each, whoever's being the importer of record, a DEA lab or a DEA certified lab in the United States to test for THC levels while we hold it at the port. One of the ideas that I floated to them was to keep it in a foreign trade zone so it doesn't sit around an airport collecting storage or exposed to pilferage. So we can keep it under lock and key in my foreign trade zone until they're done with it. And that might take a few days, maybe a week. But that's part of the things that we're floating to customs so we can make this transition and they can stop being so nervous and so jittery on this substance.
Right. Very good. And we've got DEA approved labs out of Tampa, so I'll send that information over.
Okay.
It's pretty easy. They're 24-hour turnaround too. Josh,
Okay, good.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Josh Reddy. I'm the EU Director for SovereignPort. I'm located here in Canary Islands. I also live in Berlin. Berlin, Germany is the largest market for hemp, CBD, and marijuana. We'll get into that later. The Canary Islands, just a couple fun facts here. There's 1 million people live on the island. There's about 13 million people that actually visit the island, although that'll probably be down this year. There's 2 airports. It's got a major port, as you guys saw the other day. And apparently that is just all opening up as well. And, you know, my coverage and background is pretty much government relations, business development, public relations. And really quickly, Kevin, to kind of touch on the CBD testing piece on the import-export. Sarah and I are working right now to get the right documentation from the Health Ministry of Spain, which will allow us to then test those improved products on the human consumption side, CBD, in our distribution center to then make that more of a flawless process, right? Outside of the industrial hemp piece. But outside of that, I'm just here to coordinate Europe, which is actually double the size of the United States, 720 million people. We know that we're in the consumption business, guys. So it's really exciting of what can happen on the industrial hemp textile fiber side, as well as the human consumption CBD side. Sarah and I are also working on some government relations in Germany to be able to get that Frankfurt port locked down and also create some other initiatives that will mirror what's happening in the United States on helping to be able to create a larger infrastructure for the industrial hemp market, whether that's paper, plastics, yada, 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 then to mirror and copy and paste those from Africa to Europe to the United States. So I'm happy to be here, guys. It's a very exciting beginning of this industry.
Well, and just to talk about that real quick, we were having issues with import-exporting because we were a U.S. company bringing in U.S. product, and that's, I mean, generally that's when you get stopped at the border. So we reformatted ourselves as a ZEC in a foreign trade zone in Canary Islands. So we are an actual EU company now. It's SovereignPort US, SovereignPort EU. So we're able to have SovereignPort EU bring the stuff across. It's now becomes, we send off for EU COAs. Since we're an EU company, it's easy to do that. They don't take US companies sending it to the EU for testing. Most labs won't take it. So all of that was set up to make this more fluid, and now we're able to start importing over there. So that's amazing. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so I guess we have just a couple of participants. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, or you want to jump in and say anything, feel free to participate. And I guess let's overview. I mean, a lot of people are here for like what it looks like for just moving hemp. So hemp sales, what the market looks like. And then Kevin and George can both really talk about, George kind of went over it for a second, but Kevin, you can talk about if logistics has changed at all. Any tips you have? I know you were telling me about truckers and staying on federal highways. And so maybe any tips we have out there as well. So Dan, what does the market look like right now?
The market's been fine. I mean, it's, some of the labs have switched over to hand sanitizer because they had all the alcohol. So we've had several labs, about 8 to 10 that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's plenty more that switched over to doing hand sanitizer. And once they're starting to come down off that because the alcohol became difficult to get a hold of. So we're starting to see a lot of these guys come back online doing extraction like they're intended to do, but they couldn't pass up the money to walk away from it, of course. But at this point, I mean, we're seeing a lot of flower move, and that's compliant flower in the States, and haven't had much flower go to any place that I know of other than Canada right now. I've seen some flower go there, but it's been outside of us because it's kind of restrictive still to get that flower in there. But we've seen quite a bit of flower move, got several 100,000 pounds of biomass that should be moving here this week and next week. So it's down probably 50%, but I'm hoping that the farmers stick in there. And the good news is the prices has kind of held steady. I mean, we're still seeing prices for biomass at 10% around $5 PPP or 50 cents PPP, however everybody wants to look at it. But we're still seeing some really nice stuff, 14, 15%. That they're still paying for, the clients are paying for. So we're, I mean, it's slow, but I mean, it hasn't been, it didn't stop in the tracks like a lot of things. Did I lose you? Nope, still there. My volume might be down. Oh, I don't know where
No,
I'm
your
at.
volume's fine. I can hear you just fine.
All right, no problem.
Kevin,
So yeah,
what does it look like? Yeah, go ahead.
No, but I just saying I mean, there's plenty of product moving. I mean, I obviously I wish we moved everything, but I get to hear quite a bit of product that does go, that's going out of Oregon and out of California, out of Colorado. I'm here in Colorado, even with the foot of snow, we're still seeing a ton of product move. I mean, it's nice. The thing that I think is disappointing that is slow is crude, distillate, and isolate. I mean, I haven't seen, truly, I bought some crude the other day because I was able to get it at $200 a liter. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So I bought it to hold on and, just kind of an investment. But I moved very little isolate, where I was moving probably 100 kilos of isolate a month. It's way down. So biomass is good, flour's good. I think the crude, distillate, and isolate's going to be slow for a little bit, but I have faith in the market. I have faith in the country. I mean, you're not. I wish that somebody would come out and say CBD cured the coronavirus. That would be that'd be a blessing. But it does build up the immune system. I mean, but you got to watch what you say. I mean, it's a difficult process. But I mean, I got a plethora of bottles right here on my desk. I take them. I'm taking tinctures, and I got soft gels and everything else I take. So I've traveled from Oregon to Washington to Dallas. I was like an hour behind the guy that got stopped in Dallas got the coronavirus. And shoot, I'm healthy as I get at my age. I think I'm 35. I kind of quit counting. But anyway, long story short, I mean, the market's kind of brewing. It's going to pick back up. We got to have faith in the country and faith in the people. I mean, I'm sure the market's a little slow, the retail side of the CBD, but the nice part about us is we got our hands, right when it comes out of the ground. So we've got it. We can, it's going to be fine.
Nice. Kevin, what do you see as far as shipping right now across North America?
Yeah, sure. I definitely echo what Dan mentioned. Just to touch on the crude, we're seeing a lot of crude kind of sitting on the sidelines right now. It's really a gray area when you're, transporting that stuff over state lines. We really don't feel comfortable moving, although we are fully supportive that we should be able to move this stuff since it's going for further, remediation. But we really don't feel comfortable as an organization yet sending 2-3% THC over state lines in the United States. So that is something that, you know, we're seeing could be moving quite a bit more if we had a little bit more guidance from the federal government on, you know, getting us out of a gray area. As I mentioned earlier, the clones and seedlings are really heating up. You know, it's actually been fun. It's a little slow right now, but a lot of folks we've met early on when we started 357 Hemp Logistics are starting to grow up a little bit as well too. So it's fun to watch them get their operations off the ground and, you know, come back and chat with us about, you know, their logistics needs and getting well ahead of when they actually need you know, a shipment moved. And we really encourage that because there's a significant amount of onboarding and vetting that we go through and put people through prior to moving. So, you know, I would say that things are about to heat up, Florida especially. We're doing a lot of work with the Florida Hemp Council down there and Jeff Green's group. And they seem to be ready to turn the lights on in Florida. And so, you know, really, I see 2021 being a big year for us, but 2020, there's still a lot of good things that can be done.
Now, you had talked, when we were talking about a shipment before, you said Florida's kind of tough about coming in and having all the
Sure.
proper paperwork. There was a shipment you didn't want to touch because the paperwork wasn't complete. You knew there would be an issue. What states are like that?
So Florida's a big one. You know, Florida has checkpoints. The Department of Ag does not want any outside soil coming in. So any clones that come in cannot be in soil. You know, they're following the total THC formula. That was one of the first states we met with early on with Holly Bell and
That
the
is
Department
true.
of Ag. And, you know, if you're not going to play by those rules, we don't want to work with you. And really,
Yeah.
we believe that the longevity of the industry is something that everyone should have top of mind whenever we're working together. And, you know, ironically, we're seeing, just to touch on, you know, logistics companies in general are trying to save their month by stepping in and trying to ship hemp. And really a lot of those folks that we said no to have come back to us and said, you know, this carrier moved it for us. And, you know, I really hate hearing that because it's not in the best interest of the industry. And folks just need to be careful.
I have people tell me that all the time because George helps me with a lot of the import. And if he says no, it's a no because my company's got to remain above
Florida's
board.
being really difficult. The federal government isn't being as difficult as the state of Florida is. They're not even allowing any growing in Florida yet, which is really weird. We have so much farmland here; it doesn't make any sense. But they're just, you know, that it's that old Southern school, you know, good old boy mentality that has not changed when it comes to these kinds of commodities in the state of Florida. I really, like I said, I have a lot better reception from the federal government, who is actually very receptive and ready to give us some serious guidance than the state of Florida. So yeah, you're right on that, man.
I met with the citrus farmers in Florida in southwest, you know, by Tampa area, a little east of that, and they were wanting, they were wanting to grow, but then their communities didn't want them to, and I had to do an infomercial for them that said, you know, if you grow industrial hemp, just industrial hemp outside, it would mess up any illegal cannabis growing in the area, cross-pollinate. And so that was the only thing that got them on board, but they're very conservative. They're really not interested. These small communities are not interested. They think we've got the devil's weed, which is funny, even for industrial hemp.
It's these northerners trying to get everybody hooked on pot. Well,
another funny thing, you said people call you, Kevin, and say they got it shipped anyway. I had someone, I have people every day, you know, say, well, we got it shipped anyway, and it was shipped to the EU. And I'm like, okay, where? What port did you use? You did not ship biomass to the EU and get it through like this. I know you didn't. Either you smuggled it or like something happened, but you didn't do it legally, because I know how much work that takes in relationships and paperwork. And that's why we had to set up a whole new company there. So it's interesting to hear the stories. I don't think they're all true either.
No, I don't believe so either. Some of them I believe are getting moved, some of the hot stuff. And look, I'm sensitive to it. The industry needs to keep, you know, moving forward, and we're from afar cheering for people. But you know, when I'm hearing folks coming back to us saying that they thought they had hemp cargo insurance, but in fact they didn't, and folks saying that they're telling the insurance company it's plants, but it's not hemp plants, and they're LTLing, you know, $500,000 worth of freight, of hemp freight. You know, we have dedicated vehicles. We have real hemp cargo insurance up to $1 million that's written into our own policy, without any need for underwriting. So, you know, I kind of, you know, on one side, I'm a little nervous for the industry, and then I get a good laugh out of it usually. And then folks are coming back and, you know, understanding what we bring to the table and that we mean business, and we're trying to leave a legacy and leave SOPs for the industry to grow off of. And, you know, so it's nice to see some folks that have come around and realize that.
Right. We have a question from Justice. He said, is SovereignPort moving seed? I'm doing most, what we're doing is customs clearance. So when seed is moved, it either goes to Kevin, but I know that George was working with Tor, who's, you know, the seed guy, on getting it imported as well. So you guys can speak to that about how easy or hard it is to move seed, all sorts of seed.
Well, there really isn't an issue with hemp seed at all. You can import hemp seed. Now the issue is having it packaged for retail, which is the problem that customs is having right now, and the way to classify that. But hemp seeds in general can come in. It's a lot easier to bring them in bulk than it would be like packaged. You know how they have these novelty packs that it's got a bubble on it and there's a seed in it, and you're supposed to grow your own hemp plant. They're having a little bit of an issue with that, so that hasn't taken off as well. But hemp seed in general can be imported without a problem.
Now, we were discussing, and I'm not sure if you guys came to a conclusion, you're working with Tor on it, we were discussing bringing in hotter seed like CBD, THC, because it was more of a, it was labeled, you know, like a touristy thing.
Right.
Were we able to bring in THC?
Not the touristy thing yet. We're
Okay.
still waiting for guidance on the federal government with that part. But as far as industrial hemp is concerned, the seed is fine. There's even a tariff schedule for it.
Perfect. And then Kevin, you're shipping seed right now in seedlings.
Yeah, so we just started to ship some grains and fiber seeds, and the CBD seeds we just got that thrown into our cargo insurance policy too. Those can tend to go way up there in value. You know, just a little bucket of seeds could be worth, you know, upwards of $500,000 to $1 million. So if the values do go and creep up over $1 million, we just ask to give us, you know, 24 to 48 hours to make sure we can get coverage for you. But yeah, we over state lines with seeds for sure.
Do you guys see the questions? Does everyone see the chat box? So there's a question about labeling for that. What labeling issues? Do you guys have any labeling issues right now, Kevin?
No, I wish I had my VP of Operations, JP, on, because he's
on right now. We can get him to unmute and chit chat.
Is he on there?
Yeah, I see him.
You know, there's just so many different asks based on the state that, you know, JP's team does a great job keeping up on those. And, you know, even sometimes we see some surprises that have creeped into the mix. So we haven't had any issues with the labeling, but we really collaborate with our shipping partners on those, you know, prior, and really no shipment's been the same. So we really treat every shipment very unique as we go.
That's what I've learned too, as far as customs clearance, everything, not anything is the same. People ask me to give them a ballpark. I'm like, oh, you know, Italy this week is different than Italy in 3 weeks, and is different than Italy 2 months ago. And it depends on what region and what port and what you're taking in and why and who it's going to. It's just crazy.
I've had more sellers or buyers of saplings are trying to, as opposed to seeds. I've had a lot of people walk away from the seeds lately. That was good to hear about the Florida. I didn't know anything about that as far as can't bring the soil in. So that's some good information to pass along. I think I see the questions over there. As far as labeling goes, I have a retail business as well we've seen quite a bit of pushback on some of the labeling we have. It still says hemp, but I mean, as far as anything we've sent out, we haven't had any issues with manifest or labeling. But I did want to mention, just kind of on a side note, just to pick up, I am a little bit concerned because of the seed and the sapling sales. I'm thinking a lot of these farmers are going to be a little bit nervous this year in planting season to kind of find their investors or find how they're going to reach into their pocket to plant and resell this stuff when they're sitting on a ton of products still. So I'm kind of hoping that we don't see the market go down. But I got two sides of this. I think it's relatively good because you're going to kick out the farmers who are can't afford it, and a lot of farmers, and I'm direct to those farmers. I tell them the same thing. It's not easy to be a farmer, like we've heard on TV. It's hard to be a farmer, but it's also hard to have the money to harvest it and then plan to be the sales side. And there's probably 95% of the farmers that I deal with that 50% of those, they did well with planting and harvesting. They prepared for it, but 95% of them never prepared for sales. They just figured that, we'll build it, we'll grow it, and they'll come. And that didn't happen this year, and it still hasn't happened. So I'm, like I said, I'm fearful on both sides. One, I'm hoping that these guys do kind of come back and plant, but I'm also thinking that this virus and the issues may extend our hemp growers for the next couple of years, especially the ones that know what they're doing. So it might kind of shore up the market. So I just
it might make the prices go up, which is good.
Yeah.
The prices to stabilize a little bit, not lower, but more to.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, good stuff. We're still seeing $10 a pound for good stuff. I mean, that's the people will pay especially if it's a lab and they need the throughput and they need it to be good product. It's high in terpenes and high CBD content. But right now there's a plethora of 5 and 6 and 7% stuff out there. But a lot of it's seeded and you can't do some things with it. But anyway, I just kind of throw that out there to get some opinions from anybody. I don't know who's on, but if there's someone that's doing farming, I'd love to. And being down in the coronavirus, I haven't been able to go out to Oregon or California or any place else to kind of talk to these guys to see what they're planting. But I'm talking to them on the phone, and they're not buying the seed because they haven't sold the biomass or the sapling. So anyway, somebody's got some input there. I'd be curious to hear.
Well,
I
we've got
Sarah, if you don't mind. Hi guys, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Justice Rhodes. I came on early with Sarah early last year before things really got rolling. We were talking about Native American foreign trade zones. I'm a tribal councilman for my tribe, and I'm setting up Native American foreign trade zone routes for us, and so that we can get some intricate routes throughout the United States squared away. I'm real excited to see all of you guys online today and just talking and finally getting to meet you guys. But I've been typing some of these questions over on the side, and just to give you a little bit of introduction about me, I'm a commercial real estate broker on a day-to-day basis. I pretty much just work with hemp clients. I've got hemp farms throughout Colorado, and retailers, processors, geneticists, import, export, the whole 9 yards. It's pretty much what I do, live, eat, and breathe, just like you guys. And now I'm stretching out across the country. I've got a New York client, Maryland client, Texas clients, California and Oregon, of course, and my tribe's in Washington. So ultimately we're spreading across the country, and of course, SovereignPort is an international company, and it's lovely to see us expand into Europe. Josh, I'm excited to see you coming on board, and it's good to talk to you and put a face with a name. And Kevin, talk to you, and Josh, it's good to see you guys. But anyway, to your point, Dan, I've got the same thing. I've got large farmers across the country saying, hey, what do you want me to plant? What do you want me to put in the ground? What strain do you have? I'm tired of the T1 and the cherry wine. I've got a ton of Boax or Bayox or whatever you want to call, those strains. But, do I get into CBG? Is CBG too hot right now to where everybody's growing CBG? I mean, I've got clients that have, trimmed CBG flower. I mean, Dan, you and I talked about a couple 100,000 pounds coming in and out of Colorado. So I guess I just want to get people's feedback right now about where the market's going. I do have my boots on the ground. I do see the farmers. I do see the processors. I work with the retail stores. I work with the geneticists. I work with all of them. And all of them have the same question: what do I plant this year? So I'm trying to get out in front of it for my clients and SovereignPort's clients to say, this is what you plant, and be strong in my statement. So I'd like to kind of open it up and reiterate what Dan's saying and just say, what is it that's hot? CBG is hot, but it's probably going to be flooded. Seed producers are already flooding the market. Seeds are dropping in price. Labeling is an issue in Colorado, and people are getting away with selling seeds that aren't really the seeds they are. So, I mean, all of these are issues that I think SovereignPort has to deal with. But I'm curious, what needs to be planted? What does SovereignPort want? What do our clients want across the seas, Josh? What do we want to see in the EU? What do they want over there right now? Do they want smokable flower? Did that Harvard Medical Review have any impact on the industry a few weeks ago when they said CBG helps with bone cancer and stomach cancer? Was that a global issue, or did that just kind of hit with a thud on LinkedIn? You know, what is the product that we need to be looking at in a large scale? You know, I'm talking, you know, train oil cars, you know, I mean, what are we shipping across the country here? So I want to open it up for that. Josh, what do you think?
Real quick on EU is, if you don't have an EU approved strain, then it's gymnastics to get in. Like it's a lot, especially when you have the raw product, smokable flower, biomass. It's near impossible to get in because there's so many regulations and so many laws. So I would tell farmers, if they want to open up the EU market, to look at the EU seed. And George, you know, we can ship them in through the Miami port. So EU seeds are really important. But then Josh, go ahead and answer the rest of the question, because you're there on the ground.
Yeah, I'd love to take EU seeds here, given my big farmers, and plant them so that SovereignPort has something to ship out. See what I mean?
Right.
Their own
And
clientele.
we need that. And if it's EU approved strains, oh my gosh, the transportation goes so much faster.
Right.
But, yeah, for sure.
Well, part of what I want to do is really not have to marry this to one port like Miami. Miami's the one port that I have the connections in. But the reason I'm pushing with the federal government is to be able to make it uniform across the country, where it doesn't matter where it comes in. We can use Miami, we can use Colorado Springs, we use LA, we can use Houston and New Orleans to bring things in, and it's uniform across the board. And that's why I'm actually pretty much trying to push these days. I can't do it until this whole nonsense is over, is to tip the federal government and to push them as much as you can push the federal government to come up with regulations so they're uniform across the country, and we don't have to go port shopping, which was what ruined certain stuff. Like, for example, kratom was something that it got ruined because people were port shopping, and I don't want it to happen with hemp or isolates or flour or anything that we're trying to bring in, because it's just going to ruin it and just going to delay everything and make it take longer to make it legal and compliant.
I've got a funny story real quick. George, we had a shipment come in and it got stopped, and not seized, but just stopped to review. And I don't. George is on the ground. He's been doing import. He's amazing. And I'm like, go pick it up. And he said, we can't do that. We have to figure out what they're saying and file something. And everything goes so slow. And someone like me, I think everything can be fixed in 5 minutes. Just fix it, fix it, fix it. So I immediately called Pat and Squire Boggs out of Washington, D.C. They're import-export gurus. I mean, these guys like John Bonner, like the former Speaker of the House, and the guy who was over all of U.S. Customs are both attorneys on this firm, or consultants. And so we get them on the phone, and George, we had like, 4 or 5 attorneys on the phone at one time.
Yeah,
all the paperwork he had filed. So we're sitting on the phone, and they said, honestly, we've never seen cleaner paperwork, George. They go, Sarah, I don't know why you're calling us. You should just talk to George again. He's doing everything perfect. And I go, okay. All right, I guess we're waiting. But
no, it'll happen.
George does things correctly, and it takes longer, but it's done correctly, and we're never going to get in trouble for sidestepping. And that's what I really appreciate.
Oh, it's definitely going to happen. Thank you. But it's going to happen for sure. I have no doubt. This just delayed us for a couple of months.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Let's go with also working with genetics labs to get better quality cultivars approved in the EU. Much needed for farmers. Are they looking to hybridize it with America? It would be interesting about a hybrid. You guys know anything about that, Dan? Justice, Josh, anybody? Kevin?
They are looking to hybridize. That's what I was saying there. But that would that would be much needed for the EU, because obviously the EU cultivars are a lower quality, especially when it comes to CBD production. And so, you know, you've got this catch-22 where they only want certain strains, but the certain strains that they want are kind of crap. So I know there's a couple of groups out of Italy that are, and a couple out of Switzerland that are working with trying to hybridize with some of the American strains, and then hopefully get those approved. So that's what I was just making a comment there, as far as, you know, if we can get more strains on the list, then I think it'd be a lot easier for, you know, our job.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, as soon as, and I have other people in charge of finding seeds and stuff like that. So it would be interesting to see what's available on the market where we could pull that in. And then we had questions, any future contracts in place, SovereignPort? Not that I know of, that's more of a Dan thing, but I'm thinking right now the futures are so uncertain. If farmers don't plant, our prices are going up. And I think people are waiting on that, or if we get an influx of stuff, since we're already sitting on a large crop, they might go down. And I think that's just kind of up in the air, Dan. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see the question over there. I do see one, but anyway, I agree with you. I mean, I wouldn't recommend futures to anybody. I mean, maybe a participation in a grow. We've got a few of those things that are circling around, but again, with the travel restriction, nobody's wanting to go out. I mean, nothing's proceeding forward. So right now, I mean, limited to zero as far as anybody wanting to put up any futures or delve into this, especially with guys who have products still left from this last harvest. So I think once the prices are kicked back up a little bit, I mean, I have farmers all over the place that won't even touch a conversation without it being at $10 a pound. I mean, they don't want to hear anything below that. And so,
Right.
But they've got the financial wherewithal, hopefully, to hold on to it, and the degradation doesn't go away. The product's still good in, you know, another 60, 90 days. A lot of those places have climate control facilities. So anyhow, quick answer is no, I don't see futures being viable for a while.
Yes, we can get EU seeds sent to the US soon. We just need to know, that was a question, can SovereignPort get EU seeds sent to the US soon? Yeah, we can put that together relatively quickly. And then there's also a question about escrow. My attorney, Bryant Baines, based out of Houston, has an escrow account, and he set up SovereignPort an escrow account. So there's 2 escrow accounts we can use at any time, accessible pretty quickly. So hope that answers those questions. And is there anything anybody else wants to add, or any last minute questions? This was a good little chat. I learned a few things.
Sarah, I'd just like to jump in and go back to what Justice had asked earlier, excuse me. And I think back to my cannabis, you know, actually I was over on that side of the aisle for quite a few years and watched that industry develop from the ground. And, you know, 2 words that keep ringing true, you know, that I saw folks not really, you know, pay attention to was sustainability and scalability in that industry. And I look at hemp now and I see farmers who got their butts kicked in year 1, you know, here, and who's coming back and who's going to do it again. But, you know, my thought to back what Justice was saying, I'd love to throw it back to him since he's clearly way more in the trenches than I am with farmers, is what are they thinking? Is CBD in the medicinal side of hemp really what's going to make them, you know, a future? Or is moving over to the fibers and the grain side of the business more sustainable, more scalable? You know, the first year here, I being in hemp, sitting at a lot of these conventions and looking at some farmers who've built America, you know, forgetting how to block and tackle. And, you know, I'm curious to see what Justice is seeing. Is everyone all in on the medicinal side, or is someone going to start shifting over to something that's more scalable and more sustainable over the next few years?
You know, what I've studied and what I hear is that when the United States approved the Farm Bill, there was a surprise that everybody jumped into oils. There was an expectation that there was going to be more stock and fiber that was going to be produced, but the marketability, I mean, there's a need for the product for textiles, but the profit margin's not quite there. So ultimately, a lot of the farmers didn't get into the stock and fiber industry, at least all the farmers that I know, because they couldn't make any money, or they didn't know how to make any money. And that process is still a year or 2 or 3 out before I think we start seeing more textile mills being developed throughout the states. But my farmers, my large farmers, I've got a few 1,000+ acre farmers, and one that's, hold your water here, 125,000 acres. But nonetheless, large scaled farmers that are looking for something they know they can sell come this fall, because they did lose their shorts last fall and they still are sitting on bio throughout, and they don't know how to get rid of it. I just, I told them, look, you can get 30 cents a point per pound right now, and they just about choked on their water, thinking, what are you talking about, 30 cents? But that's really where it's at, 30 cents, and 30 to 50 cents. And so anyway, so they're reluctant to sell their bio. But if they knew they had a product, for instance, EU seeds, and that's why I was asking about that. If we can get EU seeds and SovereignPort can say, we have EU seeds, and farmers, we know you want to plant in the next 3 weeks to 2 months, buy our seeds, plant our product. We know that Josh has a chain of events that are about ready to unfold throughout EU, and we can supply that product, and SovereignPort ships that product straight to EU. If we can create our own market that way, I've got farmers right now that will buy those EU seeds. And so, and a large scale, we were talking about $1 million a bucket. Yeah, $1 million a bucket. Let's do it. And so some of these large scale farmers, they just want to know that they have someone that's buying in the fall. That's why I was asking about the futures contracts as well.
Now, the futures contract for Europe, we have, not for the US. For Europe, I've got standing orders, and and that's why we put together SovereignPort EU, so we could find an easy route, not an easy route there, but a guaranteed route there that we can duplicate. When I get back over to EU, hopefully, well, when the containers land, I'm going over. But we're going to duplicate this in Cyprus. We've already started, and also in Germany. So we'll have a couple of different places that we can serve the EU. But I've got established clients there who are looking at the fact that they can have EU compliant at 9% is baffling to them. So they're very excited about it. But Justice, since you're on, I know you went over the hemp portion, but when we met, your background's really impressive. If you give just a few seconds.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, go ahead. Your foreign trade zone and legal backgrounds.
Yeah, I went to school for too long. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I have a bunch of useless pieces of paper on the wall, but it's what you use them for, I guess. Anyway, land use law, international business, a couple different times at a graduate level, thesis in foreign trade zones, specifically in Indian country, and that's how Sarah and I met. Basically through my academic background, my professional background, working in land use throughout the United States in minerals as well as surface rights, and working for different federal agencies as a contractor. That's a little bit of my background, and like I said earlier, I'm a Cowlitz Indian. I'm a tribal councilman. I fly back to Portland, Oregon once a month for a tribal council meeting. Not right now. We're actually having Zoom meetings, but nonetheless, we've got a big $750 million casino. It's our money machine, and that's my tribe. And so I've been in Indian country, working in Indian country at various different levels throughout my career, in Indian health, economic development, Indian housing, and reservations from coast to coast and border to border. So my Rolodex is deep and wide as far as Indian country is concerned, and that's where I hope SovereignPort can get back to its roots eventually, and we can create those native trade routes and utilize those foreign trade zones within Indian country. There's 575 tribes in the United States. Half of those are in Alaska. So call it 250 tribes in the lower 48 that we can utilize for foreign trade zone services. So as SovereignPort develops and grows and goes through these growing pains, and we get through developing EU, hopefully we can come back and have substantial access throughout Indian country. So we're working on those rail routes, those truck routes, and those zones and those parking facilities for product, whatever it is that we're moving on a large scale throughout the United States, so that we're not just using the foreign trade zones that are available, the 230 foreign trade zones across the U.S., but also those 250 tribes, which are also potentially foreign trade zones. Now, I know not all tribes will come online, but for those that do throughout the different regions, SovereignPort will hopefully have access to each one of them, and we can utilize that throughout the United States.
Yeah, in the foreign trade zones are really important, or the routes, the tribal routes is trade routes, is because it's going to open up UN seating. It's going to open up more representation for tribes internationally. I mean, we'd have to connect with Australia and Africa, which we already are getting, you know, relations with right now. When I was in South Africa, I met with a couple of tribes. So once we open that up, what I foresee in the future is, especially when cannabis is legalized federally, which I foresee happening, when that happens, we'll have these unique trade routes that we can utilize in Indian Nation territories throughout North America that will give us the better ability to just ship with less headaches, basically. So plus it's going to just open up a lot for the tribe, which I find important. I mean, it's an important thing to me.
I had a question to Dan and Justice. As you see folks holding on to more biomass for longer periods of time, you know, waiting for the price points to move, you know, coming from cannabis where the good guys are, you know, the good quality cultivators are nitrogen flushing these products and storing them properly. You know, I'm hoping that we can get a little bit more fancier with how these farmers are being taught to store the biomass, because I'd have to imagine some of these super sacks have mold at the bottom once you dig down deep. Any thoughts on, as we move into 2020, where we can start to educate these farmers to properly store their product?
Justice, you want to go out? It's, Kevin, I mean, I think the issue is we go back when the Farm Bill was going to be passed prior to, I think so many farmers jumped in on the opportunity, kind of what I said before, so they didn't prepare for storage. Several have, and I think as we grow, just like the extraction facilities, I think that they're all going to learn a little bit more. Unfortunately, some of them are probably going to lose some money to learn that and get that education. But I am seeing it on some of the larger scales. Some of the smaller scale guys, I mean, they're just going to suffer. I mean, the good news is, you know, some ethanol extraction is going to be able to pull some of that out of there. The bad news is, you know, they are going to have some mold. I don't think you're going to get away with it. It's not going to get away from it, no matter what. I mean, I've had some. We got 28,000 acres that we're working with, and the guy still got some mold. You're not going to get away from it all, but it's still processable. You know, as long as it's not bad mold. But bottom line, education and time is what it's going to take. I think Justice said we're looking at another 3 or 4 years of before we see some more changes. And I think you'll see that maybe next year. People will realize, hey, I could endure a longer term than just 90 days. Like I thought I was going to harvest it and sell it right away. And I still think you're going to see a lot of farms come through and want sales forces to try to move the product. Because again, they missed so many things this year from harvesting. So many people moved in to get the money. So now they're going to be knocked down a little bit, and hopefully they'll learn how to store the product.
Dan, didn't you have a couple of solutions for the mold remediation on CBD, or is that proven successful, the stuff you guys have tried on some of the farms that were having issues?
100% successful. I won't, without the approval of John telling me it's okay to put the name out there. I'm sure he wouldn't care.
We can do it next time. We can invite him.
Well, he's inundated. I will tell you, if I would have had a sprayer, I grabbed a bag of hemp just because I wanted to show some hemp while we're on a hemp call. We got at least have some hemp showing. I was going to put up.
I know it's 420.
Well, I know it's 420, so I was going to make sure I had something at the end. But the one thing was the fact that that product that John has, I have a device that sprays, and it's way above my pay grade, but it's water, and it has worked for all the bales we've had. I have a device in my house that I use that was like $500. I could call him up now and sell it for $5,000 because of the virus. It literally, that's what he's selling for. He can't call me back but once a week to talk to me. He's that busy. So there is a mold remediation that we have that will work. Unfortunately, it doesn't, we can run through some things. It's not the same sprayer that starts, but it's a process. We're working with some drying companies to get this where it sprays on top as it goes through. So you'll see a lot of ingenuity, I think, this year. And I think that will carry into some successful products for the following year. I mean, ingenuity is what they're going to need this year because it's just not, it's just the stuff where it's not on the market. That's it.
Well, what we can probably do to answer the question, Kevin, you said, how can we help farmers? maybe we'll just continue these Zoom meetings for a while and invite some farmers and some people who have remediated on hand so we can actually offer some options. I mean, people don't really, we hear more options than anyone else because we're moving it and we're seeing 100 places and they don't really interconnect themselves. So it might be a good idea just to get some more people on and continue that conversation maybe next week or the week after. I think it would benefit a lot of people, and it would probably help them decide whether or not they wanted to participate this year again, just based on some of the futures we see and the seeds we can get, which might actually help the market as well. I know, George, you want to touch upon the FDA, and I think that's really important. A lot of people have those questions, and
Yeah.
go ahead and let us fill us in on the CBD medicinal purpose.
In October of 2019, the FDA sent out 21 warning letters to people that produce multiple kinds of goods with CBD. That they're saying they're making medical claims, etc. So you have to be very careful when you are producing anything with CBD to not, at least for the moment, until certain guidelines come out from the FDA. They're saying that they don't have enough research on it, which is okay. They've done something else to open it up, but in the meantime, they haven't issued any guidance. So if you say it'll help the shoulder and your pain, they're saying that's a medical claim. You can't use it for that. So how people are going to creatively market their CBD products is very important. And you're going to be walking a tightrope because if not the FDA, then now they can't catch everybody. That's, but they are looking at websites. They are looking at marketing material for CBD products. Some people are putting it in there and not listing it as the de minimis. But if the FDA checks it out and it's got a high percentage of CBD, they're going to send you a warning letter anyway. So I work with a couple of attorneys on this front specifically, and we're waiting for FDA guidance, but we're not thinking that it's coming anytime soon. So please be careful when you market any of your goods that have CBD, not to make any medical claims whatsoever. You can dance around your descriptions, but please don't make any medical claims because they're going to shut you down.
That's the main issue. The only thing we ever had stopped at the port, the main issue was the crap they wrote on the description. Yeah. And that's the only reason it got stopped. And it's still sitting there. And it's not seized. They're just saying the description, says it's pot. Yeah, even though it's really. I'm gonna have to deal with that then.
Well, here's my
you can't do that in the descriptions.
This is a CBG bud, so I can tell you that it makes me feel really good, and I don't have headaches, and I sleep well. And if I mix it with some lifter or some other stuff, and it's all legal, I can smoke it outside, inside, wherever I want. But it's I can tell you the health benefit. I mean, I got all my hair. I mean, how many people my age got all their hair? Come on.
I do.
You're 35.
Yeah, I am 35. Well, I might have lied about my age, but it's because I look so much younger because of the CBD I take, So I have to, But it's, I mean, yeah, that's bad. I think what we really need is some more younger people on the FDA to prove some stuff. I mean, I was looking at all of our pictures here, all of us, minus Josh, look like, we're an end user, of course, but we all look like we're a little bit older for this market. But we need some of those young guys, like they tore up the hemp industry, to jump in on the FDA and start getting some things approved and showing that, we have a product here that's viable. It really does help people. It takes care of you. It helps you boost the immune system. I mean, I don't care what they tell you not to say. I mean, it's frustrating.
I agree.
But yeah, it's very frustrating because I see it work. I've seen seizures stop. I've seen headaches stop. I've seen arthritis, back pain. I had, what the really sad part is? All the last 2 years, I can't count how many farmers I go to that they're walking around the field to meet me and they can hardly stand up. And I said, what's wrong? Oh man, my back hurts. I've been doing this. Well, let me ask you a crazy question. Are you taking any of this product that you're growing? No, we don't take it. And so that to me, when I hear that, it frustrates me because I want to give them something, but that to me adds years to this industry because even though they're growing it, they grew it because of the money. They didn't grow it because of the health benefit, But now as people become more educated, they're not going to just grow it for the money. They're going to grow it for the health benefit. And I think that's when we're going to see a resurgent in the in this market. And I want to be around for that.
There's only one company, and I don't remember the name, they have an FDA ruling on it, that is allowed to make any kind of medical claim, and it's to prevent seizure in children. And
yeah,
that's
I think that was Charlotte's Web that got away with that out of Canada because they're a publicly traded company. I'm pretty positive. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I don't remember. I have the ruling. Hang on, let me see if I can find it.
But anyway, this market, we're still in infancy. I mean, this is the beginning of the market, and there's so many changes got to take place, and so much ingenuity that's going to happen this year to help these farmers, and we haven't opened up overseas. I mean, anyway, I don't even think, I have people asking me about CBN and do they plant CBN seeds this year? And I'm like, I wish I knew. I wish I was a farmer and could tell you my crystal ball was going to tell you what sold next year. But I don't even think the CBG, I love the product. I like what CBG does, but I wouldn't give any guidance to any farmer right now on CBD, CBG, industrial hemp, whatever it is. The market is so, it's still growing. You don't know what direction it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, if I could follow up on your earlier question real quick and reiterate what Dan was saying earlier, I truly agree with what Dan was saying 100%. As far as the mold mitigation, there's a lot of room to grow. I think that that particular part of the industry is going to grow. I'll hit a couple of fact points here real quick. From what I see in all my clients, let me just start with this. I'm helping many clients that are going through divorces right now because of this industry. Everybody thought they were going to be a millionaire. They used their 401k, husband or wife, they're not happy. They're splitting up. I'm helping them sell their product, whatever it is, their store, their farm, their everything. So what I'm seeing here is this threshold. All right. There's a threshold of how much a small farmer can handle. And I realize this isn't really SovereignPort's marketplace, but just as a fact point, to know that we are realistic human beings and feel for people. There's a threshold of about 8 to 10 acres that a mom and pop shop can handle. Anything above that, you have to hire labor costs, you have to hire managers, master farmers, trimmers, growers, etc. And beyond 10 acres, it's just not manageable. That's just the bottom line fact. It's closer to 7 or 8 acres. I've really reverse engineered the math. And, when you get to 20 acres or more, that's when the small farmers are falling apart. Now, to talk about the big farmers and who our clientele is, the 1,000-acre plus farmers, what they're working on is clearly a vertical system to where they've got their own seeds, they're processing, they're exporting, they're importing, etc. What I see happening for mold mitigation is a lot more testing. I think that testing is getting into lab testing is probably a good idea in states that don't have enough labs, because there's going to be more and more testing as the USDA unfolds throughout 2020 and 2021, when things really come into effect in October 2021. The testing is going to be rampant. It's going to be escalated, and people are going to have their super sacks, if we even still have super sacks at that point. I think super sacks can evolve to some level as well. But I think that there's going to be almost weekly or even bi-monthly, bi-weekly testing on whatever super sack to make sure that it's not molded, especially those that used organic product, because organic's really the only way to go as far as I'm concerned. But those that are using pesticides to create more of an industrialized, faster growing, consistent product like we see in the agricultural industry, I think they're going to have more testing as well. But to get to the drying part of it, we saw field drying this last year, and that just simply didn't work. People were having brown-sided plants and green-sided plants, and it was still fully dried. But was it? Was it half burnt and half not burnt? There's a difference there. So drying the product and seeing these dryers come in at an industrial scale is really where the big farmers are at right now. They're bringing in the big dryers that can dry 1,000 pounds an hour. And that's really where it's going to be for the smaller farmers to dry their product and really get it super sacked, and for SovereignPort to take it up in a large quantity and ship it wherever we need to ship it, so before it has to be tested again and again and again. So I think the drying process is really evolving, and that's going to happen throughout this year. We saw in North Carolina and Kentucky, the tobacco farmers are loaning their dryers up to Colorado and through the West Coast. And now the dryer companies are coming up with new products that actually dry our plant. So there's multiple facets there. One, the small guys are going to get eaten up if they don't really learn how to dry their product and prepare it and keep it correctly in super sacks. And then also just more testing, I think, is going to be required by the USDA. I have family that work at the FDA who is a millennial, by the way, Dan. So we have some, some younger guys that are working on it in the FDA as well as at the USDA. So I've got family on both sides, and I keep my finger on the government pulse of things. And I really do. And of course, all my friends are MJ attorneys or cannabis attorneys as a whole. And I think that testing is going to be a bigger deal. And
it is.
And that's going to be a big factor for us as well.
Yeah.
At SovereignPort, we're going to need to say, where's your week 1, week 3, week 5, week 7 tests? Because we need that at the Miami port in order to get it to Berlin.
And we have to have it more standardized too. There's so many different levels of testing that you get 2 different COAs, but if you understood the testing measures, they could have been the same. So I think a lot of that's going to have to be standardized. And kind of off topic, I don't want to mention the company name, but that large facility, Justice, you and I both went to see in Colorado. I know they dried outside. Did you ever see it after that or hear about how that turned out?
Just like any multi-million-dollar operation, they became very tight-lipped once their futures contracts dried up. I'm still in contact with those guys. I'm still talking to them about what their next steps are, if they want to buy another, big farm, or if they want to downsize. But they weren't as successful as they had hoped they would be. And since we did talk about futures contracts earlier, just to hit on Dan's point, futures contracts really aren't the way to go. It really didn't work out for this particular client that Sarah and I were working with, and from our understanding, they had to pretty much refund a lot of money. So that's why I asked my question about escrow as well. But we can talk about that at the next meeting, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. This was amazing. Does anyone want to add anything? I love this. I think we should start doing this weekly, even after Corona's over. This is. Sure. I learned a lot. I hope other people have learned a lot.
I just like to mention, Sarah, you mentioned just continuing to do these and bringing more guests on to further educate the supply chain. And Justice, you bring up an incredible bottleneck this past year, which was drying. And we're in talks with a company called IEC Thermal, who's actually going to be setting up some centers of excellences centered around drying, and we're going to provide the transportation for that biomass. So it's great to see pros jumping in, for this next upcoming drying season. So hopefully we can further educate that supply chain. And one update from Illinois, I'm not sure if anyone caught this, but the cannabis program has allowed for the hemp growers, as long as you're licensed, to sell biomass into the medical cannabis and recreational program here in Illinois, as long as it's used for extraction and infused products. So I love seeing that collaboration, because when recreational came in Illinois, CBD products dropped quite a bit as far as being available. THC pays the bills in those companies. The yields are much better. They're more consistent in the turns in the rooms. So I think being able to offer the patients on the medical cannabis side these phenomenal CBD products that our farmers are growing is exciting. So I think that's something I wanted to definitely leave with, that we're starting to see some collaboration between both sides of the aisle, so to speak.
Right. And I answered something privately, but I want to answer it publicly because I'm sure some people have questions. I was asked, is it easier for SovereignPort to utilize West Coast or East Coast ports? 100% because of George, East Coast. I've got FTZ and people over on the West, but it will change because of stuff you and I have been working on for a year and a half, but it will right now, if George isn't touching it, I'm just not, if George isn't touching it and or approving it, I'm not guaranteeing it.
Makes sense. Well, happy 420 to everybody.
Yeah.
Happy 420, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
I can do a high five, Sarah, to you over here, and Sean, there you go. See, I can do the side.
Yeah, we can do the whole.
Yeah.
Hey,
Diego, it's really nice seeing you.
Dan, I'm going to send you one of
It's
these
nice.
pipes.
It's nice to be
All
here,
right.
and thank you so much for this conversation. It's very helpful, and I hope to join next one.
Yes, we'll get it set up. I like these. This is a lot easier and more interactive than I thought. So this is great if everyone's in.
Thank you so much. Thanks,
I agree.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
guys.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.